everybody. Welcome back to Word Balloon. If you enjoy the videos here, please consider liking the video, subscribing to the Word Balloon YouTube channel, and of course, if you enjoy the audios and the videos, you can subscribe to my Patreon page, patreon.com/wordballoon. Hey everybody, welcome back to Word Balloon. This is John Suntress. Great video conversation with Geoff Johns. Now, Geoff has the DC Universe and CW Stargirl show premiering on May 18th on DC Universe streaming, and then on May 19th on the CW television network. Pretty cool. Got a chance to talk to Geoff. I previewed the first 5 episodes, and we discussed that, but we also get into some great comic book conversation as well. And we'll be talking about Doomsday Clock and the Three Jokers story that Geoff has coming up. And we even reach back to not only DC Rebirth, but Flashpoint as well, which kind of started the ball rolling into first the New 52, and then, of course, out of New 52, we got Rebirth, and then the Doomsday Clock, and we're looking forward to Three Jokers and any other stories that are still spelling out of the consequences of DC Rebirth and the Doomsday Clock. Great conversation. We did have a couple issues with the video dropping out, so there's a couple edits in the conversation, but otherwise, I think you'll enjoy it. A great talk with Geoff Johns on today's Word Balloon.
Okay.
I'll wait till you look at there we go. I cannot believe it's been 10 years since I've had a Word Balloon conversation with Geoff Johns. I am so happy to welcome you back, man.
Thanks, John. I mean, it feels like it doesn't feel that long at all, and all the talks we've always had have been so amazing. I can't believe it's been that long. You were saying like we haven't spoken since I was writing Green Lantern. We haven't done one of these. I was like, oh my God, that's a long time ago.
We were at C2E2, and Monkey was working on the book. Pat Gleason was working on the book. And you're like, John, it'd be great? We can get, like, all the Green Lantern creators together and do, a talk. And I'm like, Geoff, that would be amazing.
We should do a retrospective like that with Pete, Tomasi, and Doug, and Pat, and Ivan. That would be really fun. It was such a great – Pete and I, we're actually developing something for DC right now together to kind of – we really want to jam on something as a duo again, like when we were on Green Lantern, because it was so fun. It was such a great time, and working with, we actually have talking with Doug and Ivan about, all this together too. So it could be really fun. But that was such a great experience because of the people I was working with. Like I had the best editors, the best artists, the best co-writers. That was just a really great fun time. Really fun time.
And and then Brightest Day and both Blackest Night and Brightest Day came after that, and those were great stories. And we're gonna get into comic book stuff, but I understand, man, because we're really excited that Stargirl is not only happening on DC streaming but also on the CW.
Yeah, me too. I'm excited. I just want as many people to see it as possible, comic fans, non-comic fans, because it's really designed for both. It's like I wanted to create something with everybody that would hit, the hardcore DC fans like us, because I love the JSA, obviously, and the casual fans that maybe just, the families, people who like family dramedies, and I hearken it back to when I was growing up long ago. It was like, I remember as a really young kid, as a family, watching like Incredible Hulk, and Dukes of Hazzard and Knight Rider. Like there were shows that you watched together.
Yes.
And I feel like it's awesome that there's so much content out there. It's bifurcated so much, but I really did want to create a show that families could watch together, that would hit a younger generation and an older generation. But also really stay true to the JSA. And because the JSA is, to me, about generations, you've got the original generation and then the generations of tomorrow, and the push and pull between them, and I think the bonds that form between generations, that's really where the tone of the show developed from, which is just like the books, No
different. And well, also this, to me, has the same vibe as Smallville did from a family standpoint. And it's a very upbeat show. And listen, I love a good grim and gritty. And there are conspiracies going on in this show and secret plans
Yeah.
People will see as they watch it. But at the heart of it, it really is about this family that's been put together. Two step parents putting their family together, and happening in Blue Valley, of course.
Yeah, Blue Valley, my favorite small town. Well, home of Wally West. Yeah,
Absolutely, man.
it's funny when we were doing the comic books. Lee Moder and I were originally doing Stars and Stripe. Mike Carlin was our editor, who's an awesome guy, and I wanted it in a small town, and I was like, I love Wally West. It's my favorite character growing up, so I was like, I'm going to put him in Blue Valley. That's why Blue Valley got picked.
I figured. Of course, man. No,
And it was cool. Like in the comics, we'd have signs like home of Kid Flash and former home of Kid Flash, and it gave me like a connection to my favorite character. But yeah, that's where there's a whole lot of things that if you read the original Stars and Stripe comic books, they're really green, but there's some like there's a lot of heart, a lot of warmth, and a lot of like connections to the DC history in those books.
Well, and making Pat Dugan, Courtney's mentor, is great. But I really want to say too, just like ironically how Smallville came out of the 9/11 period, this is coming during the COVID virus. We need something uplifting. I mean, I remember 9/11 and feeling like as much as there were some great intense dramas coming out back then, I'm like, can I get something light and just fun? And that's honestly the spirit of Stargirl. It's fun, and we need that. I mean, I love the CW shows. I love what's happening on DC Universe streaming. There are some great ideas, and I'm the last person that thought a Doom Patrol show would work, and it is so good.
So good, yeah. It's a great show.
And the same with Stargirl, man. You're absolutely capturing yours and Lee's original vibe of the Stars and Stripe comic, but also. I'm so thrilled that the JSA DNA is all over this show because
it's obviously influenced by Roy Thomas's great work, the original work way back when the characters were first introduced, and James Robinson's amazing work too. Like Golden Age is what got me to love the Golden Age characters. And James and I have been friends for a long time. Of course, he did Starman, which is a brilliant, brilliant series. And, he's one of the producers on the show. Like I called him up. The show got greenlit. And I said, I need you in the writer's room. I said, I want you there. I said, you're going to know this stuff as well as I do. We've plotted together before. He was really excited about it. And he came out from, he lives in Vegas. He moved out to Burbank and was a massive, huge part of the room. When I was in Atlanta for about 6.5, 7 months for the whole shoot, and James came out. He was probably there. He's probably almost there half the time, and really like learning about production and soaking it all in. But also he's a killer plotter. Like when we work together, and he loves it just as much as I do. So we really had a wonderful time, doing it. I got to give him a lot of props too because he was there for me the whole step of the way. Like. We get in a room together and work on a story or a script, and we had a great writing staff and a great production staff. But James was like my rock the whole way through, along with the cast.
Along with the cast, okay,
key crew members. I mean, the cast like Brett Bassinger, Luke Wilson, Amy Smart. You've seen the first. I sent over the first episodes for you to check out, and you've seen how good they are. Like they're really, really good. They really brought their A game to it.
They're really, really good, and it does, and it plays on both levels because Luke Wilson as Pat Dugan, is so great, and I love the idea too that he's a sidekick that never graduated to be a full-fledged hero, and that whole thing is explored without spoiling in the story. And I think that's terrific.
I think it's really important. Like Pat Dugan does have this journey to go on, and the thing I love about it, and we're gonna look. If you guys want to wait and not get any spoilers, you should probably not watch this because I'm sure some are going to slip out, and a few are going to slip out right now. But something that was really important to his storyline that harkens back to his original relationship with Sylvester Pemberton and Star Spangled Kid, and and by the way, for all you Starman fans, like we reference, that the staff was created by Ted Knight. There's a story to the staff. His legacy is intact. The only real change we made was instead of Sylvester Pemberton graduating to Skyman, we had him graduate to Starman, just because it was a little more consistent and a little more, efficient for our storytelling. But that doesn't mean that Ted Knight existed or exists, etc. And there will be some, we will eventually, hopefully, we'll get to tell the other stories, but we will open up all that mythology. Ultimately, we'd like to do that if we get the chance to. But the story of Pat Dugan being this, when I first created Stargirl, I wanted to obviously, I wanted to create this character that had a legacy of her own. That was, I love DC history, as you know. I can't geek out enough over DC history. But I really wanted to find something that was unmined, because that's my favorite thing to do in DC, is find things that are unmined, because I love cracking open to things that haven't necessarily been cracked open into a lot. But Star Spangled, I had heard of a new Star Spangled Kid in Stripes, and I love the idea that Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster, the guys who created Superman, created this originally.
I didn't realize that. Wow.
See, yeah. Which is, if you go back to Action Comics number 40, it's mentioned in it, and then Star Spangled Comics number 1 launches with it. Now, the strip didn't survive. It was a lead on the first 6 issues of Star Spangled Comics, and Hal Sherman drew it, and then it went into the background. It became the backup, and the Guardian, Jack Kirby's Guardian, took over, right, with issue 7. And so issue 7's like super expensive, but I managed to find issues 1 through 6, because Star Spangled Kid in Stripes, they just weren't, they weren't the characters that broke through. But I love the idea of a kid with an adult sidekick. Like, that was the high concept. And so I wanted to create a brand new character that had like the spirit, obviously, and the energy of my sister, who it's based on, who it's inspired, at least. She's become her own character since. But find this female lead, and then find an adult sidekick for her. And it was great to kind of carry Pat Dugan from the adult sidekick then to the adult sidekick now. Like, he's never been able to get out of it. And I keep that, in this show as well. But the thing about Luke's arc is, you see Pat Dugan as Stripesy, and I think up front we really see that he sees himself as a sidekick, right? He sees himself as support, and he's happy being support. That's just the role he's been. He likes being support. He's a mechanic that fixes things. He likes to be there to fix things when things go wrong, and to support whatever needs supporting, his family, everything. And he's never really, and I think Sylvester's attitude with him is like, you're a great sidekick, but you're a sidekick. And I think everything that in his whole life, from his father to his partner to everybody, he just always has felt like a sidekick. Like, he couldn't rise up and do what other people could do. And Courtney, we see Courtney at one point. You've seen it now. She's really the first person that says to Pat, "We can do this. You can do it." And I love that about her, because Courtney's real superpower in Stargirl is seeing the potential in everyone. Like, she sees, like, you can do this. Like, you're capable of this. You're capable of this. This is your talent. And that's her real strength, her real superpower. And watching her as you go through the series unlock people, just like, I love unlocking DC characters that are kind of shoved aside and told that, like, don't waste your time on whoever it is, Booster Gold or Aquaman or Mara, whoever it is. And she's the same way, is that she doesn't overlook anyone. That's what I love about her. She doesn't judge people. It's just not her.
Right. It's not her nature. You have spun her in this like leadership direction, unlike your guys' run on JSA, where she was the kid and she was learning. And I always loved at the end of your run that she was getting her braces off, right? Wasn't that like the last?
Yeah, and then they didn't come off. Yeah, she tried to get them off. Like, it was a huge deal. The JSA showed up. They're in the dentist chair. She's like, I didn't mean to come in. And then, like, you see the dentist is like, oh, you need them on for another year. And again, that whole story was all about, she had a lot to learn. and, in the JSA, in the comics, she had all these mentors around her, so she was learning from Jay Garrick and Alan Scott, Ted Grant, and
Yep.
everybody else. That's the comic. And in this, she's got to take it upon herself to be a leader. Now, she has a lot of flaws. She's super enthusiastic, but maybe a tad over enthusiastic, a tad overconfident. She's naive. Her can-do attitude is can-do. I like underlined can-do, no matter what. So it gets her into trouble, and the trouble she gets into, like, the show is fun and light, but as you see, like, the stakes are real too.
Absolutely.
I mean, there's what starts off as kind of there's a lot of fun, and the name of the game is fun for this because, again, we wanted to create a show that was a bridge between the DC universe and ultimately the CW. That's how it feels.
Sure.
The tone of it is lighter, and it's for audiences of all ages, but the storytelling's slower. The character, we try and spend more times with characters and more time with living in moments and letting things land, but really you'll see that the stakes are real. There are moments of real fear, and the thing that I like about that is when I was back in my day, when I was a kid, like, I loved movies like E.T., and there were genuine scares in there.
Sure.
Or Raiders of the Lost Ark, there were genuine scares in there, and there are genuine moments of threat and of consequence that are in Stargirl, because it is like, it's still like you're a kid with a superpowered cosmic staff and going up against some pretty terrible people. It's all eight. Like, when people see the show, it's hard to talk about tone until you see the show, but that was the goal. That was the goal.
Well, I think you made it, and also I really like the fact that it is, of course, it's Stargirl, and there are other strong young women and adult women in the show, but there are also strong young men and adult men. And forgive me, Geoff, I won't name names of other shows, but I do think sometimes to promote strong women, some shows have sacrificed men, and they are either just bad guys or not competent. And I'm happy to see that Stargirl has this balanced presentation of, I think, the best representation, where we got a little bit of everything, bad guys and good guys that are equally strong, or they are. That's the only way I can describe it, and I'm glad to see that, because I think it's a better portrayal of the shades of different people without it in your face. And again, because I get it, and I want more shows with people of color and women represented. But don't make all the guys bad guys, or don't make all the guys like knuckleheads and stuff. And I think you achieve that. Luke is a great example, and that's why you've got. But there are others as well on the show. Yeah, both bad guys and good guys.
Eric Tyler's great too. The cast is the lead is Stargirl. It's Courtney Whitmore. Yes. There's a lot of strong female and male characters. Yeah, there's a lot of strong people, because that's the angle that we all came at it. This is a show about people, and everyone has their struggles, and it's not it's I don't know. I call it kind of humanist in a way. It's just about all people, and it celebrates all people and everybody,
Yeah.
But the show, we just have strong characters. I'd say that's what we went for, is just strong characters. We really didn't do anything but try and tell the best stories with the characters we were using.
You have again, the JSA DNA is all over this show. So even though people might think that it, is only Courtney's story, the JSA's past is very prevalent in this show. I'm trying to stay spoiler free discussing this, but
we definitely get into we definitely get into the history of the JSA. They have been around in my head and in the show. Like, we don't spell it out, but you'll get a sense of it. It's a little timeless, right? They have been around since the 40s. Like, the RJSA has been around a long time, and there's reasons for that we'll get into later.
Okay.
But we're tried to stay as true to the lore as possible, because the lore is amazing.
Yeah.
We do have touchstones to the original JSA. We will have more of that. I mean, you've seen like episode 5, I think.
That's right.
There's a lot in 5 that we delve into and beyond that. But it is, again, it's both, looking forward and looking behind us. Like it's rooted in the past and the future and the present.
Absolutely.
But that's the goal, is not to just the history of the JSA is so rich. Those characters are so wonderful. There's still stories to tell, and I don't want to spoil it, but we are just starting to peel that onion.
For fans who enjoyed your Justice Society episode in Smallville, there's going to be a sense of the familiar. And again, I'll keep it spoiler free. But I think some of the things that we all loved about that episode, there are echoes of that are handled in Stargirl. And again, you've got a bigger canvas than just a 2-hour episode to explore that, and that's really great. And obviously, the bigger story is a lot of fun, and maybe in subsequent conversations we might be able to talk a bit more about it after people see what you're doing. So.
It's funny. Like, so the JSA episodes of Smallville, which I wrote a long time ago. I didn't feel old until we started talking about how long ago we talked. But the episodes of that I wrote a long time ago. So Glenn Winter, who directed the Stargirl pilot, he directed that first part of that JSA episode, that JSA Smallville episode.
Okay.
And so we met on Smallville, and I wrote a Legion episode, and he just happened to direct it, and I went up to the shoot, and we just formed a great bond, and we ended up working together on all sorts of shows. And then when Stargirl came up, he had directed so many great pilots, and he's just an amazing storyteller and director. And so I talked to him, and luckily he came on board, and we really, we had a huge screening for everybody, the cast and crew of Back to the Future, out in Atlanta before we shot the movie. So people would be familiar with, this is a little bit of the tone, is that we're going for. It's just a little retro, just a touch retro, because again, the JSA need that. You want that historic feeling with the JSA. You want you want some history and some nostalgia and some kind of Americana mythology in this. Obviously it's called Stargirl, so there's patriotic themes throughout, but so you have to embrace that, just like Captain America does, and in your own way. And but Glenn directed that first Smallville episode with the JSA, and then ultimately this. So he was familiar with the characters and Stargirl, but we just had more time to play, more time to spend, and now we got to service them as the main characters, like Courtney and Pat as the main characters, and then subsequently the Justice Society around them.
It's going to be great. And the directions you're going in. I also like when you say Americana, that's a big theme in the show as well. And it is an interesting conspiracy plot that is kind of one of the threads of the show as well. And, Blue Valley is this idyllic town, but there also is this sinister side of what's going on. I mean, that's the great thing. It's in the heartland. And all those scenes of Blue Valley, when you get to town and see the shops and all the people and stuff, it's great because it's this nice, warm, kind of feeling. But then you do discover that, there's something sinister going on.
Yeah, there's an underbelly to it, right? There's an underbelly to Blue Valley, but again, in a very DC JSA way. Don't want to spoil it completely, but people probably have figured it out by now. But yeah, we wanted Blue Valley to really be a real place, a small town, but with this strange kind of energy to it that's both good and bad. And it's in there, but it develops much more as we go.
Well, and the big bads, can we say the name of the team?
I mean, Injustice Society, I think it's out there, the Injustice Society, Icicle, Brainwave. I mean, Solomon Grundy, I cannot wait for people to see our Solomon Grundy, because you really, and it's, as we'll see more of him in the later part of the season, but he's somebody that I love, Solomon Grundy, and we had a real chance. We worked with this great VFX company called Zoic that Andrew Orloff was, who co-founded it, was our day-to-day. He specifically oversaw everything, and we'd have VFX meetings once a week. and they were all in with Stripe and Solomon Grundy and the staff, and their everyone working on it was fans. So we try to stay as true to the spirit of the characters and look of the characters as we possibly could. And I think people will be really excited when they see the Solomon Grundy.
And the whole Injustice gang, Brainwave is deadlier than ever in this portrayal than I think. And again, because you want to stay true to the look of the comics,
Yeah.
but Brainwave is very sinister. And also seeing his powers in live action convey a bigger menace, I think, than I ever felt in the comics myself.
Yeah, I agree. And there's some of those characters, James and I were talking about this with the other writers, is like we've written a lot of these characters. I never really wrote Brainwave when I was doing JSA for 9 years, and James never really wrote Brainwave when he was doing Starman. Like, we just never got around to the character, because in comics there are a lot of telepaths. But L.J. Shannon, who is a costume designer on the super suit side, who did all the amazing suits for everybody, we had a conversation. I said, like, let's stay true to all these characters. And Brainwave, in the comics, he kind of wore this, green. It was like kind of like a green doctor smock or something. It was
like a smock, like you said, yeah.
Yeah, and then we just updated that, and Christopher James Baker, who plays Brainwave, he's from Ozark. He was in season 1 of Ozark. He's an amazing actor, and he brought the spirit of that character to life. And we have Henry King Jr. and all these. It's all about parents and children and generation legacy. Yeah, it's all about that.
And the villains, you will see original versions of the villains that fought the JSA, but also there are new legacy villains, just as Stargirl is a legacy hero. So that's a direction that gets greatly explored in the episodes that I saw, and clearly will be, in subsequent episodes.
Yeah, spoiler alert.
That's that's why I wanted to keep it at least that. But it is fun. Like there's a new Fiddler, which I think is really interesting. And leave it at that. No, Geoff,
it is. I'm really excited for people to see it. Yeah, look. I hope it finds an audience. We'd love to do more of it, and the cast was amazing. The crew was amazing. It was really a special experience, and everyone worked really, really hard on it. Some great talented people. Walter Garcia, our stunt coordinator, our entire writing staff, our production team, producing director on Smallville, and Glenn Winter's mentor, and he's our producing director. He just was a huge part of the show too. But yeah, we'll see, man. Fingers crossed. I love the characters. I love JSA, and there's so many more stories to tell. We've already actually have ideas for a lot of really concrete ideas for season 2. So I'm hoping we can start that up again soon. Knock on wood, after we all get through this really difficult time.
Understood, man. No, 10 episodes? How many episodes for the first season?
Yeah.
13. Great.
Season 1. Yeah.
Excellent. Man.
And they're all, we actually mixed the last episode. We did the final mix like the day the studio said we were closing down. We got our mix that Saturday morning at our house out in Burbank, and we wrapped it up. But Trina Renee, who's one of our producers, she oversaw all post. I give her so much credit for landing the plane, because it was right when everything was going down. We just got in there and finished the episodes, and we finished them the exact way we wanted to. We didn't rush it. There's nothing we compromised on our end, and so hopefully people will enjoy it, comic fans and non-comic fans, because again, it's really a show designed for everybody.
All right, let's switch gears to comics.
Okay.
I want to go back to Rebirth, Geoff, because again, legacy is so important to your stories, and I'm really glad that the powers that be recognize that at the beginning. And can you tell us what the thinking was as far as after New 52 to go to Rebirth, and the conversations you might have had with Dan DiDio and Bob Harris and Jim in terms of this new direction?
Yeah, it was. That was a while ago now. It was really. At the end of the day, it was all about trying to put some of the heart and the the heart back into to some of the stuff that we lost. There's so many great runs in New 52, but there were some things I think that we lost. And as I was talking to them, I said, it feels like there's a wall between everything that was published prior to New 52 and New 52 on. And I think that wall's got to come down, because everything before, there's so much good stuff before that, and stuff that matters and resonates with readers and characters that matter and relationships that matter and that are good. Like, I don't know why we would wall them off completely. And that was really what it was about. But, it was about trying to embrace all of it and just move forward, but kind of knock that wall down and move forward. That's really what it was.
Prior to that, and it inspires another question, the Flashpoint story that you did, there were some really interesting alternate universe ideas, and I think a lot of us too, when New 52 was coming out, it's like, it would have been interesting to see Superman treated more like an alien under wraps. And the radical idea of obviously Thomas Wayne becoming Batman was so exciting and fun, and also Martha becoming the Joker. Interesting little nuggets of stories that came out of Flashpoint, and it's interesting that was it thought of as possibly being a norm moving forward?
No, it was never a norm. I got to give huge credit to Andy Kubert, and I did the Thomas Wayne Batman and had a great time with him. But Brian Azzarello is the one that came up with the idea that Martha would be Joker, and I thought it was great. It's such a amazing miniseries with Eduardo Risso. That was like one of my favorites. One of my favorite books that Brian's done. He's done a lot of great books. 100 Bullets is so good. But really, when we did Flashpoint, it was always designed to be this cool alternate universe, emotional, character-driven story of Barry Allen, and it was never gonna restart the universe. It wasn't designed to restart the universe. When we worked on it, it wasn't going to do that, and it wasn't until somewhere in the process that the New 52, they decided to do the New 52, and it just, for them, it made sense to draw that line in the sand there as time came back together. So that's where it came about. But I can't recall. Obviously Tom King used Thomas Wayne, or a version of Thomas Wayne Batman. He's been around. They brought him back, and I don't really recall any conversations that they had about, hey, let's do a Flashpoint line or books, or there were cool ideas in there. James Robinson did some really cool work with this weird new character called the Outsider that we put in.
Absolutely.
Yes. That was kind of inspired by the Alfred Pennyworth version of the Outsider. But there was never, I don't remember ever hearing any real talks. I think everybody was then so focused on the New 52 as it kind of bubbled up that they were working on that.
And the Injustice game took the Amazon Atlantean War, I think, to a new level, and there was some really great kind of royal I Claudius kind of, Capulets and Montagues kind of royalty against royalty.
Yeah, there's always an interesting Atlanteans versus Amazons. It always felt kind of somewhat interesting. Yeah,
great stuff.
Cool. So many great writers and artists worked on a lot of those books surrounding Flashpoint. That was a lot of fun. That was really a lot of fun.
And also, the great letter at the end of the story that Thomas writes to Bruce, beautiful moment. Yeah. And again in Rebirth, man, that first episode that made me cry, Geoff. And truly, Wally and Barry in Rebirth, and oh man, how could I forget you? And seriously, we're all like, oh man, that's awesome.
I have to say, that was just as a super DC nerd. That was a comic fan. That was my that was one of my favorite stories to be able to write. Like the opportunity to write that story and bring Wally and Barry into that. And after all the time that Wally had been, forgotten and gone, and creating this mystery, and it was a lot of fun. It was really, really a lot of fun.
And that led to Doomsday Clock, and again that great puzzle of Batman finding the comedian's pin in the Batcave, and what does this mean? And I think a very elegant solution to why are things different, and them being self-aware. I mean, that's like great kind of Grant Morrison Animal Man moment of like a character looking at the camera almost and saying, wait a minute, something's wrong. Something's changed. Yeah.
We really wanted to, with Doomsday Clock, Gary and I, obviously, like, kind of giving kind of a very small reason for why things were different, but making it character driven, making it about, Dr. Manhattan unable to see the future, seeing just darkness and wondering, like arriving in our universe, seeing that it's a different type of universe, it's a metaverse, right? That means it constantly changes and shifts. Again, I like to look at everything that's been published and use it as, you see it as a kind of one big story, even though it's written by so many different people and drawn by so many different people. It is one living, breathing story that does constantly shift. But that Manhattan could see, our universe, or DC universe, for what it was, and then start to try and test it, and then ultimately it turned on him like it's turned on anyone who messes with it, like Anti-Monitor and et cetera, all these villains. And he found himself in the sights of Superman, and he became this, I think, this character who said it's got to be this way or that way, and Superman's really the one that taught him there's always a different way, right? You don't have to choose a side, you can actually choose another side. It's much more complicated. Life's much more complicated than that, and I thought that was a really important thing. And once he learns that, it's not just him being Dr. Manhattan being an observer. He knows he can affect his destiny. He might see different things that could happen, which he does at the very end of the book, but he also knows he can help make things happen. You don't have to be passive, and you shouldn't be passive. Even if you think that's where things are going, you can still try and make a difference. And that's what Superman taught him. And I think that's a real important lesson, because ultimately Manhattan does make a difference in his life and his world.
I loved,
and my hope, follow up on stuff we planted. Like there's a lot of interesting ideas and characters that we planted at the end of that, with stories to come.
I was going to say, you introduced the mime, and I forget the male's name.
Marionette, and Marionette, and the mime is the guy. Marionette and
Marionette.
Mime. Yes, I love Marionette. Great characters. So fun.
Yeah, no, they were interesting. They were interesting additions, and well, honestly, Geoff, the audacity of returning to Watchmen, because there were fans and there were detractors about Before Watchmen. I'll tell you, I liked a lot of the stories that happened in Before Watchmen. I really loved Darwin's Minutemen story. I thought Azarello did a great thing with Rorschach and the Comedian. I mean, those are three of my favorites, even off the top of my head. Amanda and Darwin's Silk Spectre story. I was just talking to her about it back in March, and how much I love that story.
Yeah, really good. Yeah, really good. Great creators.
Yeah, and but really, was there hey, should I really step into this pool? I mean, again, it's kind of.
Yeah, Gary. Well, Gary and I, we had a lot of conversations about it. That's why we didn't We were almost going to end DC Universe Rebirth special with a big, to be continued in Doomsday Clock, and announce it in that book, and have the title there and everything. And we had a version of that, but we weren't 100% committed to it, because Gary and I were still do we do this story? And we had a huge conversation about it. And we were in the UK, actually, and we were walking around outside for, I don't know, an hour or two. And I was pitching the story. I said, I think I got the story. And it was a lot of things in the world were happening. And by the end of that walk, we're let's do this, and it's going to be challenging and controversial and complicated and the hardest thing we've ever done in our life, but let's do it. And so we did, and it took longer than we hoped,
Sure.
Part of that's the complexity of the book. Part of that was just, life is crazy, sometimes busy, but it was, it was kind of a combination. I think, we wish that they would have launched it later, so we had more lead up time. But the book was hard to do. It's hard for us to do, and it took a lot of work to do. But I'm glad, look, it did really well, and people seem to really like it, and we're proud of it. Gary and I are really, really proud of it. But it was a labor of love. It really was.
I also wonder, you mentioned Pete Tomasi earlier, Patrick Gleason, Dan Jurgens, what they were doing in Superman, and what happened with Jor-El being plucked out of time. Was that something they invented, or was that part of your story as well?
God, that idea came from when John Romita and I were doing a run, and we introduced the idea of Mr. Oz, and eventually we left that. John was going to go do something else, and And so I left Superman, and they took on that storyline. But I have to say, like Pete Tomasi, Dan Jurgens, they did such a wonderful run on Superman. Pete's
Agreed.
Super Sons was great. I love that book. Pat
Super
Gleason's
Sons
art
is
was
great.
in that.
Absolutely.
You know, and Dan, I've told Dan Jurgens, like he's done so many of my favorite stories over the years at DC. Created so many wonderful characters like Booster Gold. You know, a lot of things he did. I've been inspired by. I got to work with him on Booster Gold. He's a
Yep.
great guy. And you also have like these, just to talk about creators like Dan, like you've got like these creators like Marv Wolfman and George Perez and Len Wein, like these creators who Jerry Ordway, who really helped define DC, and Dan was and is definitely one of those. Doomsday,
Abs-
obviously.
I agree. No, and I love talking to Dan, and I'm glad that Dan has become a friend like you're my friend as well. And it's no, I am constantly inspired by how he's still 40 years later still coming up with amazing ideas. It's
Yeah,
just incredible.
yeah.
Um,
Tomasi too. I mean, I talk to Pete
yes.
like literally almost every day. We're working on stuff in comics and out and out of comics, but he has always been my like kind of my like guru in comic books from when he was my editor until we became friends and he was a writer. And again, like we worked on that Green Lantern Corps. That whole era was so fun, and reading his books is a joy because he's so character driven. He writes from the heart. He cares about these characters. Um, he's really a inspiring guy. And hopefully we're working on something right now. Hopefully DC will prove it, and we'll do it. We'll see.
All right. Switching gears, that is another great stroke of rebirth, and I don't think anyone saw it coming, was the idea that the Joker wasn't just one guy. And I love it because it explains, and Gary Frank explored it when Batman's looking at the monitors and we see the different representations of Joker over the years, the classic, Bronze Age Joker, Killing Joke Joker, and then also what Scott Snyder and company did with their version of the Joker. And it's like, oh God, they are different. And it's like you really thought it was an artistic choice, but then tell me about coming up with this concept that no, it's three different guys.
Oh, I mean, Jay Fabok and Jay's another amazing, brilliant artist, and he's obviously illustrating three Jokers. We worked on Justice League together. Just such a talented, passionate collaborator, and I'm so grateful that we're working together on this project. But when we're working on Justice League, originally we came up with this idea. Like I just threw the idea out because I thought about the different, it's not just about the different eras of the Joker, but about the different perceptions of the Joker. Because I think he can mean different things. The three people I think he's hurt the most in the DC universe, and that's Bruce Wayne, Barbara Gordon, and Jason Todd. And the story itself is really about wounds and healing from those wounds, physically and emotionally, and scars that are left, physical and emotional scars, and how these three people have dealt with it differently and have felt like the Joker's a different kind of presence in all their lives. They'd never done a story that focused on the pain that the Joker inflicted that was shared between them, where it's specifically about, specifically to Bruce, Barbara, and Jason, because they've all gone through a lot, but Barbara's life and Jason's life in particular took hard left and right turns, and they recovered differently. They became different types of people. And I feel like Barbara healed the right way emotionally and Jason the wrong. And then physically, they both have their challenges too. And Bruce is a huge part of this because he's faced Joker since the beginning. But that idea of three came from the three perspectives of these characters, of someone that has encountered the Joker since Batman #1 and seen the different ways the Joker behaves, and then somebody he was shot and paralyzed by the Joker and has a perspective on what the Joker is, and somebody that was essentially murdered, by the Joker and has a perspective on what the Joker is in that. I feel like exploring that territory emotionally and then tying it into the mystery of the Joker, of who the Joker is and where he comes from, and is there more than one, and what would that mean, and why would that be? It's all one big story. And originally, when Jay and I talked about doing this story, there have been so many amazing Joker stories in comic books. So many, from obviously The Killing Joke and Death in the Family, and what Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo did. Like, there's great Joker stories. Like, there's some classics that are on everyone's shelf, and we wanted to come at it. If we were going to do a Batman Joker story, we really wanted to try and come at it from a different angle and look at the Joker in a different way and explore the characters in a different way and live with the characters, and see another side to what the Joker has done, who the Joker is, what the Joker is, not strictly in a continuity sense, but just in an emotional sense, because we really respond to these classic stories like Batman the Cult. I've mentioned this a few times in interviews about this book, is like Batman the Cult, such a great, high quality, high crafted story that puts Bruce through a real physical and emotional exhaustion and tells a finite story that was in these prestige format books. And I remember when it was coming out, it was so good.
Yes.
And it felt special. It felt, and it's own. That's the kind of book Jay and I wanted to create, was that real special Batman story that got to the core of who he is, and put him through something that was really emotionally challenging, awakening, damaging, all that stuff. And by tapping into the Joker and the characters that he's gone up against, that's what made it appealing. That's why we wanted to do it. We wanted to make sure that we had a really good story to tell, because again, I think that's probably why I gravitate towards like the lesser known characters a lot, because I feel like Batman, there's great stories that have been told with Batman. He doesn't necessarily need the help to be cool. He's already cool.
Now, Bernie Wrightson drew the Cult. So, was it Steve Grant? Who wrote it?
It was no. I think it was Jim Starlin who wrote it.
Of course, it was Jim Starlin. Absolutely, It was. Yes.
I mean, he did some great Batman. It's funny because Jim Starlin did some really iconic, amazing Batman stories, and they should collect like a Jim Starlin Batman, book. That would be awesome. That would be so cool.
I agree, and isn't it interesting? I did this great panel at Terrificon in Connecticut, I think 2 years ago, and it had Denny O'Neil and Mike Barr and Starlin, and they brought up, Death in the Family and when Jason was killed. And I learned that, unfortunately, Starlin was the fall guy for that story, because the corporate concern was, hey, you killed Robin. And they're like, no, we didn't kill Robin. We killed a Robin. Don't worry. And they're like, hey, man, we got bed sheets and birthday cakes and greeting cards to sell. What are you doing? And so that really sucks, because you're right. Jim was so great on that. And even Denny admitted, it sucks. And I mean, they're fine now. But that was really an eye-opening revelation because it's like, hey, why isn't Jim Starlin on Batman anymore? It's so good. And then, unfortunately, sometimes corporate minds,
He should do another Batman story.
Oh, that'd be great. Well, Geoff, honestly, I know you've done a few non-DC and Marvel things over your career and stuff. Where are you on creator owned? I mean, and again, I'm just interested in terms of where the business is, and as a veteran now, what your thoughts are on creator owned.
I think it's really important. I think it's great that people do it. I think there's some of the best books are creator owned. I love James Tynion's book right now. Something's Killing the Children. So well written, so well put together. I am working on something. I don't want to talk about who it's with or the artist that's drawing it or anything like that. But yes, I agree with you.
Okay, good.
I agree with you. Of DC, I love the characters, but creating new stuff is really fun too.
Well, and this is a constant conversation with creators. How 2 generations ago, the pinnacle was working for DC and Marvel, And now there really is this opportunity of making your name at the big two and then taking the audience with you. And like you said, James did it. Scott has certainly done it. Hickman has done it. You know,
Yeah.
Tom King's doing it, you know. Yeah.
I agree. More
So
to come.
I understood, and I'm glad to hear that. That's great.
Yeah.
You know, any comments, obviously, on what might happen in comics? Because we all know coming out of the virus, things are going to be different, and we're seeing, without any malice directed at any entity, that the current system of one distributor and the way that things are divvied up between publisher, distributor, and the local shops, it's a broken system. I'm saying that. I don't know if you have observations and thoughts of what's going on right now.
I I do, but they're probably not as educated on the day to day of it, you know, because I focus more on the creative, on story and everything else. And you know, I am a partner in Earth 2 Comics here in LA.
Yes.
Car D'Angelo. It's a great shop, and not to hype the shop, obviously, but it is a nice shop. But I talk to Car a lot, and it's a struggle. You know, it's a real struggle. But so many people are struggling. So acknowledging that everybody's struggling on some different level now, because everybody is, you know,
Yes.
in some way they are.
Oh yeah.
And I think like we have it relatively really lucky because we're sitting here talking about comic books and TV show. Like we're super lucky. And so, you know, I don't want to downplay what's happening by focusing on the business of comics, but I love comics, and it's a huge livelihood of everybody's, including mine, and a huge love that I have a passion for. I want to see comics. It's an art form.
Absolutely.
You know, and comics, you're not going to stamp out comics. The comics are not going to go away. It's an art form. It could evolve depending on the business. You know, it continues to evolve. We've seen that. But I also feel that comics has something that a lot of other things don't have, and it's people like the collectability. They like to read the comics. They like to interact with people who love reading comics. You know, there's a real shared passion. People pay pilgrimage to it by going to conventions.
Yes.
And I know that, you know, I believe that we'll all get through this in every way, because we will, and comic books will too, and they'll evolve and change if need be. I don't think there's clarity exactly, at least from my perspective, on exactly how yet, because things seem to change daily about when the country opens back up, when things go back to normal, what normal will be. There's so many different theories, and everyone has an opinion, and I'm not going to add mine to the pile because there's so many. But I will add or say that comic books they're too loved to go away, and there's going to be challenges on everything, getting everything back up and running, including comic books. And it is scary, and I'm sure there's conversations going on everywhere. I know there are, about every aspect of the business moving forward and how to improve it. And hopefully it just gets better and better. And comics are still celebrated and created and beloved because they are. And I think it's a great art form that provides a lot of joy and livelihood to a lot of people.
Well, and it's inspiring great films and great television shows, and I'm glad you're keeping your hand on both the comic book side and also what's happening on the small screen and the big screen. And there are certainly changes even prior to the virus in terms of big screen and small screen that I think are great. And it's so funny. I think back to like around 2013 or so, where people were saying maybe there's an oversaturation of superhero product on the screens. And maybe it's, maybe we've reached our point. Well, clearly 7 years later, that's not the case. And
well, look, all I know is like, I love superheroes, so I'm not gonna complain.
No, absolutely. Hey, man, neither will I. And I know a lot of people watching and listening feel the same way. And truly, what you guys have going on at CW and DC Universe is just great because, again, especially the DC Universe product itself and Stargirl, now part of both worlds, you guys keep up in the game and I think find other ways to tell superhero stories. And that's always been my thing. I felt that way when Deadpool came out. It was like, yes. And of course, Dark Knight, the Nolan movies were R-rated too, but it's like, no, there's room for that. And I keep comparing it to the
Yeah,
Western and saying
I
the Western evolved over 70 years, and superheroes will get that same opportunity.
I agree, and they do evolve. You see every different aspect of them, and like it's it's always hard to predict the future, and but let's enjoy the golden age. Let's enjoy the moment. Let's have fun and share this shared passion we love for all this stuff. And it's funny when you say small screen and big screen, it feels like every day those are becoming more and more the same.
Yep. Yep.
It's going to be really interesting to see how that continues to evolve as somebody who works on it and also loves it. Like it's going to be really, really interesting.
I've never heard you talk about what happens across the street. I mean, we all think of you as a DC guy, but although you had your Marvel run as well, I'm interested. Do you stay away from the Marvel Cinematic Universe, or even like Amazon's The Boys? I mean, I think there are other interesting.
I love The Boys. Eric Kripke's doing an incredible job on that. It's so good. I sent him a note. It's so good. The Boys is just such a. It's funny because he was developing trying to develop a superhero show that had the spirit of this, and he found it with The Boys. He just killed it. That show is so great. L.J. Shannon, who does the costumes designs, does Stargirl's costumes.
That's fantastic.
So, yeah, that's so that's like kind of the connection that we had with the show, and but I love that show. No, I love all of it just because I've written for DC so much and been a part of DC. I love every company. I like good stories. I love the Hulk. Hulk's my favorite character on the Marvel side. I've said it a billion times. I love Spider-Man. I love Savage Dragon and Spawn. Like I love all this stuff. Like it doesn't. The companies. I just have happened to. Feel an affinity and live and breathe in DC stuff and the lore. I like the history of it. I like the legacy behind it. I grew up when they were relaunching everything post-Crisis with Legends and John Byrne's Man of Steel and Justice League International and Mike Baron's Flash and Perez's Wonder Woman. It was a great resurgence, a very character-driven resurgence, and so that was really influential on my love for the books. Like I just gravitated towards all these new titles, but I love all the universes. I've never drawn a line, in my heart between stuff because it doesn't really, it's not really in my head too.
I understand. Well, again, this love of legacy is galvanized in this new Stargirl show. And truly, you mentioning the costumes, that's another great thing. Because a costume can look goofy.
It can.
And you guys avoid that, I think. And also the Boys were able to make fun of it in its own self-parody way in some cases, but also that it works and doesn't look, Billy Zane's Phantom, really had a lot of great intentions on it, but yet there were things about it that just can't help but look goofy, the way they shot it and some of the choices they made visually and stuff. So,
L.J. Shannon, again, who's the Super Suits costume designer, did Doom Patrol as well.
Makes sense.
And Titan, right? She's amazing. She had this great kind of like creative hub in L.A. here with so many people that are working on this stuff, and she's a huge fan. So we would have a lot of sit downs and conversations about the costumes, and there were some that really really tricky to get, like Our Man. Like it just took a long time to figure out how exactly to do the hood because, again, we wanted to stay true to like he's got a hood. That hood is so iconic and so it's just cool and unique. We didn't want to like lose the hood. And if you look at all the characters, Henry Thomas plays Dr. Midnight, and that costume is like we went for more of like a leather and fabric canvas look. Like it's more grounded because the character feels more grounded, but it's still true to the spirit of who Dr. Midnight, is. And spending it took time too, spending the time and resources, financial resources on the costumes to make sure that they look good. But LJ and our team really did that. And then Legacy Effects, who built built a bunch of the Iron Man suits and the stuff for Mandalorian, Star Wars suits, built Stripe, the big robot. So
Stripe is amazing in the show, I'm glad we got back to that because we didn't mention it earlier, and it works. It really works, and it doesn't look goofy or like bad CGI. It works.
Oh, it's great, and the crew that made it, Legacy Effects. So the guy's name is Alan Scott.
Ha!
And I was
that's
like,
awesome.
Nate's Green Lantern. He's like, I know. I was like, that's so. It just fit. Like, so Alan Scott built our Stripe that we have on set.
Destiny.
It's destiny. It was great, and they put in, again, like everybody, they really put in the passion. When you see Stripe, he's an impressive character, really impressive.
That's excellent, man. All right, I promised you an hour. We're at an hour, so I want to.
Are we already?
Yeah, but as always, Geoff, one of my favorite things, and sorry, kids, I don't mean to tease you, but it's like we stop talking, and then he's like, "Okay, you want to know what's coming up?" And it's like, and half the time I always go, "No, man, I want to fucking read it." Okay, you're awesome for doing this, but it's like,
I just
no,
get excited. Once you pull my string, I want to keep talking.
I understand, absolutely, man. Someone's trying to break in our Skype conversation just now.
Really?
Yes, but that's okay. Well, someone was just calling me. I don't know what the deal is, but that's all right. I've shut them down, and so yeah, I look forward to our post on the record chat.
The show is out, and we can get a little bit more into the JSA legacy, and hopefully, I can talk a little more about comic books and comic book stuff by then.
That would be great, Geoff. And truly, as always, I've missed you. I'm so glad you're back.
You too, buddy.
And truly, absolutely, man. And I'm glad we're doing face to face because I miss seeing you as well.
What's interesting is that these video calls, and I'm sure a lot of the listeners / viewers of yours, like, it's becoming so norm now. Like I've had a drink with my best buddy in Michigan a couple times, where we just, hey, let's have a drink together, and we Skype and I get a drink and we're just hanging out like we're at a bar. Done it with a bunch of friends from comics. Dan DiDio and I have done it a few times already.
That's great.
It's been really fun to just, connect with people, and it doesn't really matter how far away they are, whether they're in your city or across the state. I encourage you guys, like anybody, to, it is like, it takes a little getting used to, but it's great. It's nice that we have this technology during this time to actually connect with people and talk with people, and we have things, social media, and we're really just, I mean, despite everything, we're very, very fortunate right now. Really fortunate.
I agree with you, man. No, and I've done the same thing with high school buddies and out of town buddies, and it's a great excuse to remember. And again, that's why another positive, unfortunately, to come out of this with all the misery is this sense of community, and it's not going to keep us apart, and that it really is important to connect. And I know everyone feels that way, and that's why I added the video component to Word Balloon really since the virus started. I had the time to really kind of learn it better, and also I've just been doing both pre-recorded conversations and live streams as well when it works. And yeah, it's great. No, it's important, and also thank you for helping me. I want to keep the comic culture conversation going during this time. Because I know pencils are down, publishing is down right now, distribution is down. Let's help the stores as much as we can. I say it all the time as well, and I know you have the same sentiment of call your store, ask them about backstock. I mean, hey, grab Batman Earth One, the 2 volumes of Batman Earth One, great run of your stuff.
I just finished the dialogue pass on the 3rd volume, and Gary's, I think he's got about 15, 20 pages left to go, and that should be out this year, we hope.
Oh, that'd be great, man.
But that's a project we've been working on, and we just, we started it, and then we stopped it to do Doomsday Clock, and I know we were supposed to wrap up, and we're still talking.
I'm glad you
did, Doomsday Clock, and then we picked it back up right when we finished, and so it's just about done, and we're excited about it. It pushes our Earth One Batman mythology pretty far, so we'll hopefully people dig it. But I agree with you. Like, keep the comics. Like, people aren't going to forget about comics in a couple months. It's just not when it's in your blood. Like, you're reading them now. You're talking about them now. We want to talk about them. We want to, I can't wait to go back to the stores, and because the stores for me is where, like, my best buddy from Michigan, Josh, and I used to go to this store called The Vault all the time, especially in the summer between school years and even college years, we'd go to the vault and we'd hang out there and talk about comic books. And it was great. Being face to face with people. Like, I love that we have social media and the digital world to talk to people, but being face to face with people, sharing passion, there's nothing that tops that. And that's why we're going to get through this and come back strong.
Agreed. And also, a lot of people, I think, felt very individual about, geez, I'm the only person that really likes comics. And thank God for the stores, because it's like, oh, no, wait, there really is a community out there. And again, that's been the great thing about social media and podcasting and video casting and certainly the conventions, where it's like, no, there's like thousands of us out there. And it's great that we can all connect. So I agree. And it starts at the local shops. I totally agree with that. So, and it's great to hear Volume 3 of Earth 1. Real fast aside, did you watch Epics and Pennyworth? Because I felt that what you kind of Alfred's backstory that you kind of established, explored in Pennyworth. I love the show. I think it's a great 60s spy show.
Yeah. Bruno Heller is awesome. He did, The Mentalist in Gotham, and Danny Cannon, a great director. They did that. They did a great job on Pennyworth. Such a cool, different world and different show.
Yeah. No, great stuff, man. Dude, thank you. This was great.
Thank you.
I'm not wishing for the lockdown to extend, but I hope while we are stuck inside that we have time for a subsequent conversation, because there's millions of other things we can get into. And it's great. It's great to reconnect. Awesome. So thank you.
Too. Thanks, buddy.
Thanks again for watching another Word Balloon video. We've got plenty more at our channel, Word Balloon. If you enjoyed it, please like it and consider subscribing to the channel. And of course, support me on Patreon, patreon.com/wordballoon. Thanks a lot for watching.